Welcome to Shadow of Truth with your host Dave Kranzler from investmentresearchdynamics.com and Rory Hall from thedailycoin.org. And today is Wednesday, June the 24th, 2015, and this is a quick market update.
Do a quick rant about what's going on in silver. We're now at over 1 billion ounces of open interest as of yesterday.
Over 1 billion ounces of silver, paper silver in the market, huh?
Yep.
Well, I'm not that smart of a person, but I'm not that stupid either. Something got to give there.
In yesterday's manipulation effort to push the price of silver down, they piled on another 24.5 million ounces of paper silver. The Comex has got to be headed toward a default, and I wrote a blog piece about it or I'm in the process of writing a blog piece about it that I'll be putting up shortly.
Now, as far as how many contracts is that, Dave?
200,273 silver contracts of open interest.
So 200,200. Okay. So what is 1% of that?
No, 1% is 2,000 contracts.
2,000. Okay. So it's 2,000 contracts.
10 million ounces.
10 million ounces. Does the Comex even have 10 million ounces available?
Oh yeah. It's got. I think the last report showed 57 million ounces roughly in the registered account.
So 20%. So if 1% of the current open interest contracts, which is 2,000 or 1% would be somewhere around 2,000 contracts. That would be around 10 million ounces of silver, and that would represent just about 20% of the overall eligible. That's just for one delivery month.
If 10% of the open interest on the Comex stands for delivery, the Comex is completely blown up because it would wipe out all of the silver, not just the registered silver. The registered silver, to wipe out the registered silver, which is the silver that's available to be delivered, you just need about 6% of the open interest to stand for delivery. Yeah, and I'm not convinced that the silver that's being reported as being in those vaults is really in those vaults.
Yeah, because it's for information purposes only. It doesn't actually the information.
Comex won't guarantee the veracity of the vault reports.
Correct. This is just a number that we made up. I mean, you're using numbers that are at the absolute end game of it, and if we look at more realistic numbers like a 1% or a 2%, that stand for delivery. I mean, that's going to expose more than what I think that they can handle. I don't think that it would take the full 6% to stand for delivery. I really don't.
I think rather than trying to figure this thing out mathematically and slicing and dicing what may be there and what isn't, I think your first statement sums it all up. This is headed towards the end game. We're getting close to the end game here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to and it's just going to expose it. If people start standing for delivery.
A good friend of mine in New York, when I told him that we're at 1 billion ounces, and he works with hedge funds, his only comment was, the Comex is headed towards a default.
Where else could it be headed? I mean, it's not like it's headed into, greener pastures. And speaking of greener pastures there, Dave, why don't we take a look at the other markets and see what's going on? And yes, they did.
The mining stocks opened up nicely green, and within an hour, they've almost got the S&P green, and they've taken the metals back down, and the mining stocks are now veering towards negative territory. So, Rory, these are the most corrupt markets in the history of the world.
Yeah, they are.
And what's frustrating about it and agitating about it is that it's obvious for everyone to see, and there's really nothing we can do about it except sit here and take it.
there's not one thing that we can do except get out of the way. I mean, that's it.
You know what? I was out of the way in gold and silver, and they've taken most of the wealth that I had accumulated in gold and silver away from me with their manipulation. So even getting out of the way doesn't work.
I don't know. It's a stinking nightmare. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, as far as what does a person do? There is no economy. There's nothing but fraud. There's nothing but manipulation. There's nothing but propaganda. Everything is completely backwards at this point. And I just don't understand what it's going to get people to understand that. I hate it. I hate it as much as you do, because it just makes us look like the banana republic that we are in the.
Yeah. Oh no, we're definitely a banana republic, and more major countries in the world are starting to disconnect themselves with this country and gravitate towards the new frontier being formed by China and Russia.
Exactly. And just saying, I'm not dealing with these band of criminals anymore, because it's nothing but. It's like going down to the corner, back in the 30s and 40s, and dealing with a loan shark. I mean, because that's what you're dealing with, is just criminals. I mean, they're just criminals.
But
now
it's criminals that are basically enabled by the government, because the government is populated with the representatives of the same criminal world.
That's who I'm referring to as being the criminals. It's the government. I mean, the government it's because of the Federal Reserve that owns the Treasury that we have these manipulated markets. These manipulated markets are owned by the too big to prosecute, too big to jail banks that own the Federal Reserve. So it's just a daisy chain of criminality. And when you're talking about the too big to prosecute, too big to jail banks, you're basically talking about the government, because the too big to prosecute banks own the Federal Reserve, that own the Treasury, that own the purse strings of the federal government. So it's classic fascism, in my opinion. It's classic. I mean, and it has been since 1913.
Well, that's funny that you call it classic fascism, because I was just going to make that same remark myself.
I mean, I don't know what else to call it. I mean, unless you want to take it a step further and call it tyrannical fascist dictatorship. I mean, because now that the Senate has shown their true colors, bought and paid for criminal cronies of corporate America, and passing the fast track for the TPP, that none of them know what's in it. They've already said that. They don't know what it is because Obama has kept it away from them, and said you can't look at it. It's too secret. It's top secret. One of the scariest parts of it that is known is that the corporations will basically become sovereign entities that will be able to dictate what the rules are going to be, what rules that they will play by.
Well, my buddy Titus called the TPP, this was his comment about it. He said it kills off any notion of the consent of the governed. That too sends the Declaration of Independence and the Magna Carta into history's toilet bowl.
There you have it. I mean, how do you make a corporation a sovereign entity? How do they have rights as a human being? They don't. But now they're going to be given those rights.
Here's what else he says. The TPP now takes the gloves off and formally says corporations decide what is and isn't law. So not only is the rule of law dead, but the law itself is dead.
Exactly.
This actually goes beyond resurrecting the divine right of kings. Kingdoms did in fact have laws. It was just that the kings themselves were above the laws until the Magna Carta took hold. With the TPP, what we're getting is the next step. Not only are corporations above the law, which Holder told us on December 2012 in the HSBC case, They are the law because the law is whatever they say it is.
Exactly.
The TPP is nothing but a formalization of global slavery. We're as good as dead when this passes.
Well, I mean, it's for all intents and purposes, it has passed. I mean, they fast tracked it. All it takes is Obama's signature, and he does have a phone and a pen. So, I agree wholeheartedly with what John Titus has said. Is that we are now it's a formalized enslavement of humanity is exactly what this is, and we have no, and all of our rights have been completely stripped and given to General Electric, ABC,
IBM, Google,
exactly. And,
Pharmaceutical Inc.
Yep. I mean, we have nothing. We can't stand up to them anymore.
The amazing thing is how I got into this conversation with him was I emailed him. I said, "Do you realize that anyone who's read the contents of the TPP and discloses it to the public can be thrown in jail?" That's part of this legislation. It's not allowed to be disclosed to the public what's in it, which is in direct violation of the Constitution. And he came back at me. He goes, "Yeah, that includes members of Congress." And he said he was listening to an interview of Marcy Kaptur the night before. She's a congressman from Ohio that was real active in trying to fight everything Bush was doing. And she stated that she was seriously frightened by the threats to prevent disclosure in this legislation. I mean, that's how badly these guys want it to get passed. And it just shows that Obama, he's not really the president. He's just nothing but a useless dish rag. Well, a useful dish rag for the people who have bought and paid for the Oval Office. He's a useless dish rag to everyone else, including those who voted to put him in office.
Right. Because, I mean, I just wonder what the impact of the food stamp crowd this is going to have. You know, as far as people that are on the government dole, because I mean,
they'll keep the government. The people on the government dole are going to remain on the government dole until the dollar has no value whatsoever. It's free to print money and hand it out to people to keep food on their table so they don't revolt.
Has anybody thought about what the retaliation is going to be from China and Russia, who have both come out against it? Not only have they come out against it, but they've said that they've shown that they're against it by Russia starting the Eurasian Economic Union and China with the New Silk Road. Those two partnerships that are separate but still fall under the same umbrella go directly against the TPP, period.
I haven't really put any thought into what this does vis-a-vis the United States relationship with Russia and China or the BRICS, because I've been sitting here the whole time praying every night that this thing gets shot down. And clearly there's been enough money sprinkled around Capitol Hill so that it's not going to get shot down. It's probably going to pass with flying colors. So I haven't really thought about that, but my initial gut reaction is that this probably escalates the West and the East closer towards some sort of global military conflict. You know what? And if that's what it takes to defang the United States government, I'm all for it.
Yeah,
I'll openly admit that. You know, China, come defang this government because it's the most corrupt in the history of the world.
You know, we've discussed on numerous occasions how the reality of China and the mistreatment by the West of China, and we've seen since World War II the mistreatment of Russia by the West, and it's the same thing. It's just not as embedded and as long, doesn't have as the depth of history that misbehavior towards China or towards Russia that has been towards China. I mean, these guys must get together. I would think that Xi Jinping and Putin get together and go, are these guys serious? Is this real? Am I actually seeing this? I mean, I can't imagine that. I would imagine that their conversations are similar to what we're having, unless they're on the same team. And I don't really think that they're on the same team.
No, I don't believe that. You know, there's an overarching conspiracy, and really Russia and China and the U.S. are conspiring behind the scenes. I don't buy that.
I don't believe that anymore. I did at one time. I don't believe it anymore, though. I don't see how anybody with half a brain could look at this and go, this doesn't benefit anything. This only benefits a handful of people, and that's it. That's all that it benefits.
It goes against human nature, Rory. I mean, at the base level, we're animals with instincts, and we've got self-preservation, survival, and selfish instincts. And the West, via England, Germany, and by extension the United States, has basically ruled the globe since, I don't know what, the 1500s, 1600s. And my guess is China and Russia are basically colluding to take that power away. And who knows? I mean, I don't know that Russia and China can necessarily share power. We'll see. But I do think that they are colluding right now to try and take the reins of global rule away from the West.
Yes.
And just perfect verification of that is the old adage, he who controls the gold makes the rules. Well, where is all the physical gold flowing to? It's flowing from the West to the East.
And primarily China.
Yes.
I mean, Russia's getting their fair share, make no mistake about that, and so is India. India's getting their fair share, so, I mean, there's where the gold is. And there's where a big chunk of the global population is as well. I mean, between China and India, you're looking at, well, close to a third of the world's population, just in those two countries. And you throw Russia in, and you're looking at solid 1/3 of the population, period.
Well, I think the statistic I saw was that the BRICS represents, or maybe it's the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, represents something like 2/3 or 3/4 of the world's population.
Yeah, the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, actually it's not quite that high. They have 2/3 of the natural resources, but
no, it's population wise too. It's something like 2/3 of the global population.
I was thinking that it was more like 50% because
you have it's more than half.
Billion.
It's more than half.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I know that it's a lot. I know that they have a lot under that umbrella, and that the folks that are, it makes sense that people would gravitate towards that, towards the Shanghai Cooperation Organization or the BRICS, and why would that make sense? Because they just want to conduct business. Not interested in these arguments or the fact that we just want to kill people, which is what it seems like the United States is all about. Well, we just want to bomb the crap out of everybody and steal everything that we can. Whereas it seems like that the BRICS consortium and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Eurasian Economic Union, they just want to conduct business and make things happen and just conduct business. They're not threatening anybody. They're not saying, we're going to send drones over into your neighborhood and blow up your wedding parties or, track people down. Are they doing these things? Probably. I mean, I'm not trying to paint these people as, some kind of saint. They're not. They're still governments. They're as corrupt as anything, but they seem to be a lot less. They seem to be a little bit more humane about what they're doing than the West is.
Hey, you got no argument from me there. That's for sure.
I mean, they're just, why do we have to enslave people? Why is that? I mean, I know that the Chinese, we hear these stories here in the West about how it's slave labor, and and they make $1 a day or $2 a day or whatever it is. I don't know if that's propaganda. I don't know if that's true or not. I do know that there's a lot of people that are moving from farms into these large megacities that are all across China, and they seem to be somewhat happy taking the jobs that are available. And according to Jeff Brown, he's not saying anything about that. He's not saying that people feel like they're slave labor, and the wages that they make modest, but they support what they need to have supported. Whereas here, it doesn't. People are going on strike to make $15 an hour to flip hamburgers, and what's $15 an hour? I mean, that's not going to progress in our current setup, in our current system. Is not going to progress our society, or is it? You tell me, Dave.
Oh, no. They're the government and corporate America Inc. is trying to push the middle class back into the dark ages. I mean, Warren Buffett basically said, to paraphrase him, I think around 2006, this country is going to become a nation of serfs.
And how would he know that? Because he's on the team.
Exactly.
He's on the team that's going to create the serfs.
He probably owns the biggest piece of Obama.
You think so?
Yep.
And then Soros owns the other big chunk.
Soros owns a big chunk, and the big banks own a big chunk. Big corporations own a big chunk.
I know that if you get your news from television and radio, that you're being fed propaganda and lies. I know that if you aren't doing your own personal due diligence, doing the type of research that you do, the type of research that I do, and that other folks from around the web, the type of research that they're doing, then you're not doing the things that you need to be doing in order to protect yourself. And if you're not doing that, then I feel sorry for you. I really do, because you ain't gonna make it.
And to be honest, Rory, I'm not even sure that those of us who have taken measures to protect ourselves are going to make it.
We'll at least be in the back of the line instead of the front of the line.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll have a fighting chance.
It goes back to what I used to tell people 10 years ago. I used to say, they used to ask me, what's going on in this country? How do I protect myself? And I'd be like, well, I can tell you what you need to do to give yourself the best chance of getting to the other side of what's coming. But you're going to have to decide for yourself if you want to see what the other side looks like. I personally am not sure I want to see what the other side looks like.
Well, Dave, let's just end it right there on that happy note, and thank you all very much for tuning in.